How can you ignore an experience when the person who had it has proof that their workplace is part of a company involved in shaping a troubling future? If you stay until the end, you will gain a complete understanding of what is to come, when it will happen, and the individuals involved. Most importantly, you will learn the key steps that Jesus revealed every believer should take to remain secure and guided in the days ahead. Otherwise, it will not be easy. Quickly tell us where you are watching from so our prayer team can include you in today's prayers. I want to be honest with you about something. I am a pharmacist. I work in the pharmaceutical industry. My company is part of the system that is going to make these vaccines concerning what is coming on the date I will share with you. I know that this is terrifying. I know that this is difficult to hear. I know that you might want to reject everything I am telling you because it is too much, too dark, too frightening. But this is the truth. This is what I saw. And I am telling you because you need to know. The reason I will not tell you my name is because I've seen what happens to people who speak about the future. I have lived through this before. In 2017, I had an experience. I do not want to talk about the details of what I saw in 2017, but I will tell you that I saw something that was coming. I was not certain what it was. I was not clear about the details, but I knew that something was coming, and I felt I had to tell people. So I did. I went public. I told people what I had seen. I gave my name. I gave details about where I worked. I made myself available to questions, and people rejected me. People called me crazy. People said I was making things up for attention. People said I was spreading fear. People said I was trying to scare people into believing things that were not true. But then something happened that proved I was not making things up. The thing I had warned about started to happen. COVID came, the pandemic came, and suddenly everyone realized that I had been telling the truth. But by then, it was too late. By then, the people who had mocked me, the people who had called me crazy, the people who had doubted me, they had already made decisions based on the fact that they did not believe me. They had already exposed themselves to the virus. They had already gotten sick. Some of them had already died, and they could not change those decisions. And for telling the truth in 2017, I paid a price. People found out where I worked. People found out who I was. People traced me. People came to my home and told me I was spreading false information. People told me I was causing fear and panic. One man broke into my house. He did not hurt me, but he was there. He could have hurt me. He could have killed me. I learned a lesson from 2017. I learned that telling the truth is dangerous. I learned that when you try to warn people about the future, they will reject you, and they will hurt you. For those of you who stay to listen to this experience, I am asking something very difficult from you. I am asking you to watch all the way to the end before you decide whether I am telling you the truth. My profession is pharmacy. I have worked as a pharmacist for 19 years. I went to university. I passed my licensing exams. I have been part of the system that delivers medication to sick people every single day. 8 days ago, on April 5th, I died for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. That is not a long time. In 3 minutes, you can make a phone call. You can eat half a sandwich. You can walk to your car from the building where you work. But in those 3 minutes, I saw things that have changed everything about how I understand what is coming to our world, what is coming to America, what is coming to all of you. Let me tell you what happened before that moment, because the days leading up to it matter. I had been feeling sick for about a week. Nothing serious, or so I thought. My body was tired. My head hurt. I felt like I had the flu. As a pharmacist, I see people with these symptoms all the time. We call them in. We tell them to rest, to drink water, to wait it out. Most of them get better. I thought I would get better too. But my wife, she was worried. She kept saying to me that I should go to the hospital, that I should get checked out, that something felt wrong to her. I kept telling her no, that I was fine, that it was just a virus. On April 4th, my wife made the decision for me. She drove me to the hospital. She did not ask. She just said we were going, and we went. The hospital we went to is one of the big ones. It is the kind of place where they have everything, where they have machines that can see inside your body, where they have doctors who have studied for so many years that they know almost everything there is to know about keeping people alive. When we arrived, they ran tests. They looked at my blood. They looked at my heart. They asked me questions about my family history, about whether I smoked, about whether I drank alcohol. I answered all of their questions. I was tired. I was sick. I wanted them to tell me it was nothing serious so I could go home. The doctors came back to me. They said my condition was not serious, but they wanted to admit me for observation. They said they wanted to keep me for maybe 2 days, just to make sure nothing got worse. I told them no. I told them I wanted to go home. I told them I felt better already, but they insisted. They used words like precaution and better to be safe, and we just want to monitor you. So my wife and I agreed. We said yes, I would stay for 2 days. 2 days. That is what we thought. Then came 3:17 in the morning. I remember the time because I looked at the clock when I first felt it. The clock on the wall said 3:17. It was still dark outside. The hospital was still quiet, or as quiet as a hospital can be. And then suddenly, I could not breathe. It was not like when you hold your breath and count to see how long you can go. It was not like when you have a cold and your nose is blocked. It was something different. It was like my body had forgotten how to do what it was supposed to do. My chest felt tight, like someone had put a belt around me and was pulling it tighter and tighter. I tried to sit up. I tried to get air into my lungs. Nothing worked. I remember pressing the button for the nurse. I remember hearing footsteps running. I remember hearing voices saying words that sounded urgent and professional. Words like code blue and crash cart and get 'em on oxygen. I remember seeing faces above me, faces of people I did not know, people whose job it was to keep me alive. And then I remembered nothing. When I say I died, I need you to understand what I mean. I am not speaking in some poetic way. I am not being dramatic. My heart stopped. My breathing stopped. The machines connected to my body would have showed a flat line. I was dead. The doctors have told me since that I was dead for 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes, they worked on me. They pushed my chest. They put a tube down my throat. They put medicine into my veins. They shocked my heart with electricity. They did everything that doctors know how to do to bring someone back from death. But what I want to tell you about is not what the doctors did. What I want to tell you about is what I experienced while I was dead. When I first became aware of myself again after my heart stopped, I was not in my body anymore. I could see my body on the bed below me. I could see the doctors working on it. I could see their faces, concentrated and determined. I could see my wife's face too. Somehow she was there. She had gotten a call, and she had come back to the hospital. She was standing in the corner of the room, and her hand was over her mouth, and her eyes were wide with fear. But I was not afraid. I was somewhere else. I was above my body, looking down, and I felt strangely calm and clear. And then I became aware of other beings in the room. These beings were tall. They did not have wings like the pictures you see in church books, but they had a presence about them that was clearly not human. Their bodies seemed to shine, but not like light shines from a lamp. It was more like they were made of light, or made of something that light passed through. I could not see a clear shape to them. It was more like I could feel their shape, if that makes sense. They were there, and I knew they were there, even though I could not describe what they looked like. There were 5 of them. They did not look at me. They did not acknowledge me at all. Instead, they walked straight across the hospital room to another patient's bed. There was an old man there, an old man that I had never seen before. The 5 beings stood around his bed, and they did not do anything violent or scary. They just stood there, and then the old man's spirit, his soul, his essence, something I cannot name but that I understood was him and not his body, rose up from his body and went with them. One moment the old man was there, the next moment he was gone, and the 5 beings walked out of the room carrying something with them that no machine in that hospital could measure or detect. I understood immediately what had happened. I understood without needing anyone to tell me. These beings were angels, not angels like the ones in paintings, with halos and white dresses. These were angels like they actually are, according to the Bible. They were here to take souls from people who were dying, and they came back. Many times while I was in that state between life and death, they came back. Each time they came, they would walk past me, and each time they would go to another patient's bed, and each time they would leave with someone's soul. I saw them come and go so many times that I lost count. Young people, old people, men and women, children, it did not matter. These beings did not choose based on age or gender or how sick someone was. They came, they stood by a bed, and they took someone who was ready to go, and I could not tell if these beings were angels of light or angels of darkness. I could not see good or evil in them. I could only feel a kind of radiation coming from them, a power that made me understand that they did not work for any hospital and no human being controlled what they did. I was waiting to see if they would come for me. As I watched, one of these beings separated from the group. It did not go to another patient's bed. It walked straight toward me. There was no hesitation. There was no question about whether it was coming for me. It was. I could feel it, and I did not resist. I did not feel afraid. I followed. As this being led me, I noticed that we were walking on a path. Not a path like a road, made of concrete or stone. It was more like the air itself had become solid, like there was a way to walk through the hospital that was separate from the hospital itself. Other souls were on this path too. Some of them seemed happy. Some of them seemed confused. Some of them seemed sad. But they were all walking, and we were all following these beings, and we were moving somewhere. But then the being that had come for me turned, and it led me in a different direction, away from the other souls, away from the path they were on. And before I could ask why, before I could ask anything, I saw something that changed everything. There was water in front of me. Not a small puddle, not a little stream. This was a large body of water, still and quiet and completely clean. When I say clean, I do not just mean that it had no dirt or pollution in it. I mean that it was so clear, so pure, that I could see my reflection in it from a distance. The water was so transparent that it seemed like it might not even be there. The surface was like glass. I was drawn to it. I wanted to see myself reflected in it. I wanted to know what I looked like now that I was dead. So I moved closer. I stood right at the edge of the water, and I looked down. What I saw was not my face reflected back at me like looking in a mirror. What I saw was a city, an entire city, with buildings and streets and structures that I recognized. I was confused. I looked up at the being that had brought me here, but the being was gone. It had brought me here, and then it had left, and I was alone. I looked down again at the water, and I understood that what I was seeing was not a reflection of what was above the water. What I was seeing was what was inside the water, or maybe the water itself was showing me something. I still do not fully understand it, but I recognized what I was seeing. It was America. I was seeing a map of America spread out inside this water, like the water was a mirror showing me not what was above it, but what was in it, and I could see it so clearly that I could identify states. I could see California, I could see Texas, I could see Florida, I could see the Great Lakes, and I could see a small portion of Canada at the top. I realized that I had been given a gift and a burden. I was not seeing this by accident. I was being shown this on purpose. As I watched, I lifted up, not by walking, not by jumping. I simply rose above the ground, and suddenly I could see the entire thing. I could see all of the water, and I understood that the water itself was in the shape of America and a bit of Canada. That is how big it was. That is how much I was being shown as I floated there above the vast expanse of water, suspended in the state between earth and eternity. I became aware of something that had not been there before. A movement, a change. Something was beginning to take form on the surface of the map beneath me, and the moment I noticed it, I could not look away. There was a color spreading across the landscape. It started as a small point, like a drop of something falling into clear water. and then it began to move. The color was red, but not the bright red of a fire or a warning sign. It was more like the color of dust mixed with blood. It was the color of something old and heavy and worn, the color of earth that had been stained with suffering. This red began its movement from a single location, and as I watched, I understood that it was not moving randomly. It had direction. It had purpose. It moved like something alive, like something conscious, spreading outward in all directions from its starting point. It moved slowly at first, almost cautiously, but with a kind of certainty, as if it knew where it was going and nothing could stop it. Wherever this color went, whatever it touched, nothing resisted it. There was no barrier that stood against it. There were no walls or obstacles that blocked its path. The land itself seemed to accept it, to receive it, to allow it to cover and consume everything in its way. I watched as it spread and spread, covering more and more of the map, taking over sections that had been clear and clean just moments before. As this color continued its movement across the landscape, I began to notice something else. There were lines drawn across the map, not lines like you would see on a regular map, the kind that show you where roads are or where the borders between states are drawn. These were different. These were lines that seemed to divide the entire map into sections, like someone had taken a ruler and drawn lines across it to separate it into pieces. I did not need anyone to tell me what these lines meant. I understood immediately. These lines represented time. Each line was a boundary. Each section between the lines was a unit of time. And as I looked more carefully, I realized that these sections were months. The map had been divided into months. The entire year had been marked out in this way. The red color that was spreading did not move in the simple way that time moves. It did not start at the beginning of the year and gradually move forward through each month in order. Instead, it moved in a way that seemed chaotic, jumping from one section to another, sometimes moving forward, sometimes moving backward, sometimes staying in one place for a long time before suddenly erupting and moving rapidly into the next section. I watched as the red color would fill 1 month completely, covering every part of that section of the map. The spreading would seem intense and rapid. Then there would be a pause. It would seem like the color had stopped moving. It would seem like nothing more was going to happen. The color would just sit there in that month, not growing, not spreading further. It was like the thing that was causing this color was resting, or waiting, or gathering strength for what was coming next. And then, without warning, the color would suddenly start moving again. It would jump to a different month, sometimes skipping over the months in between. It would start spreading in that new section. It would grow and expand and fill that month completely, and then it would pause again. This pattern repeated over and over as I watched. The color would spread in 1 month. Then it would pause. Then it would suddenly erupt in a different month. Then it would pause again. But the overall movement was always forward. Even though it was not moving in a regular, ordered way, it was always progressing. It was always taking over more of the map. It was always getting worse. I stood there floating in the air watching this vision unfold, and I was deeply confused. I did not understand what I was seeing. I did not know what this red color represented. I did not know why it was spreading across the map of America in this strange and irregular way. I did not know what it meant that the spreading did not follow the normal order of time. The questions were building up in my mind. What was this color? What was this thing that was coming to America? Why was it spreading in this way? Why did it not follow the regular timeline of months? What was the point of showing me this? What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? I tried to understand it on my own. I tried to look at the pattern and figure out what it meant. I tried to see if I could recognize what the color represented just by looking at how it was moving, but I could not. The vision was clear, but its meaning was hidden from me. I could see the problem, but I could not see the solution. I could see the question, but I did not have the answer. I was standing there trying to work it out in my mind, feeling the weight of confusion pressing down on me, when I felt something shift. The air around me changed. It became heavier, more present, more filled with something that was not air, but was something like presence, like awareness, like consciousness itself. I turned, and I knew immediately who was there beside me. I had never seen him before in my life. I had no memory of being in his presence. I had no experience that I could compare to this, but I knew who he was, without any doubt. I knew him the way you know your own reflection in the mirror, the way you know your own heartbeat, the way you know the things that are most essential and most real about existence. It was Jesus. It was the one I had read about my whole life, the one I had believed in my whole life, the one whose story had shaped my understanding of what it means to be human and what it means to care about other people. He looked the way I had never expected him to look, and at the same time, he looked exactly the way I had always somehow known he looked. There was no particular color to his skin. There was no particular feature that would have allowed me to identify his race or his nationality or where he came from. Those details were not important. Those details were somehow hidden, not deliberately, but just as if they were not meant to be the focus of attention. What I could see, what I could not stop seeing, were his hands. On his hands I could see the holes, the places where nails had been driven through his flesh. Not healed holes, but holes that were still open. And from these holes blood was dripping, not pouring, not flowing like from a fresh wound, but dripping, slowly, continuously, as if the wound would never close, would never stop bleeding, would never fully heal, no matter how much time passed. Everything about him was shining. His entire presence was filled with light, but not the kind of light that hurts your eyes or that blinds you. It was a light that was warm and beautiful, and that seemed to contain everything that was good and true and real. It was like trying to look at the sun, but instead of pain, there was only warmth. Instead of blindness, there was only clarity. Instead of fear, there was only peace. As I looked at him, I began to understand something. I began to understand that he had made it so, that I would not be distracted by what he looked like. He had arranged things in such a way that I would focus on what he wanted me to know, not on his appearance, not on trying to figure out what his nationality was or what color his skin was or where he came from. All of those questions, all of those details that usually matter so much to us, they had been set aside. They were not invisible, but they were not important. They were not what the moment was about. Only the light was important. Only the presence was important. Only the fact that he was there, that he was aware of me, that he cared about what I was seeing and what I was confused about. He turned his attention to the map beneath us, to the vision of America and the red color spreading across it. And as he looked at it, he began to show me what I was seeing, not by speaking words to me, but by helping me understand. It was like knowledge was flowing from him into me, like I was being filled with understanding without having to hear it spoken aloud. He revealed to me that the lines I had seen on the map, the divisions that I had thought were months, these were exactly that. Each line was a month. Each section was a time period. The map had been divided into 12 sections, one for each month of the year. This was how time was being marked out. This was how I would understand the timeline of what was coming. And he revealed to me that the red color that was spreading, that was moving without following the regular order of the months, this represented something specific. This represented something that was coming to America, something real, something that would happen, something that could not be stopped once it started, but that was still in the future, still something that had not yet begun. He showed me more about how the red color was moving. He showed me that the way it was spreading, jumping from one time period to another, meant that the thing it represented would not follow a normal pattern. It would not start in January and gradually spread through February and March and continue in an orderly way through the year. No, it would have periods where nothing much would happen. It would have months where things would seem quiet and under control. People would think that perhaps the danger had passed. People would think that they were safe, but then, without warning, the thing would suddenly erupt. It would spread rapidly and intensely. The red color would cover a whole month in a short time. People would become afraid again, but then it would quiet down. It would seem to pause. It would seem like it was going to disappear. And people would relax again. They would think that it was over. They would think that they had survived it. But it was not over. It was just waiting. It was just gathering strength. And when the moment was right, it would erupt again. It would spread again. It would cover another month. And this cycle would continue over and over, each time with periods of peace followed by periods of crisis, each time leaving people more damaged and more afraid than before. I was beginning to understand the shape of what was coming, but I still did not understand what it was. I still did not know what the red color represented. I still did not know what was spreading across America in this strange pattern of intermittent eruptions and periods of quiet. So I asked him, not with words, I did not speak, but I asked him in the way that thoughts and questions can be asked when you are in the presence of something greater than yourself. I asked him silently in my mind what this was. What was this thing that was coming to America? What was this red color that was spreading across the map? What did it represent? What did it mean? And instead of him answering me with words, instead of him giving me a simple explanation that I could understand quickly, he opened a vision in front of me. I could see factories, not one factory, but many. Large buildings, the kind of buildings that you see when you drive on a highway and you wonder what is happening inside. These were industrial buildings. These were places where things were made. And inside these factories, I could see what was being made. I could see pharmaceutical equipment, large machines, complex machines, machines that had been designed for a specific purpose. I could see machines that mixed things together, combining different substances into something new. I could see machines that filled bottles and sealed them, taking the mixed substance and putting it into containers that could be transported and stored. I could see long assembly lines, lines that seemed to stretch on for a very long time, where thousands and thousands of something were being made. The production was massive. The quantity was enormous. These were not small operations. These were large-scale manufacturing facilities. And as I looked at these factories, I began to recognize some of them. I could see details that were familiar to me. I could see the buildings where I had worked. I could see the equipment that I was familiar with. The pharmaceutical company that I had spent 19 years working for. The company that I had trusted. The company that I believed was doing good work to help sick people. This company was one of the factories that I was seeing in the vision. This realization struck me with force. This was my company. These were people I knew. These were machines that I had worked around. This was something that I was part of, whether I knew it or not. I wanted to protest. I wanted to say that there was some mistake. I had spent 19 years in this profession. I had never been asked to do anything that was wrong. I had never been asked to harm anyone. I had never been asked to poison anyone or to deceive anyone. The people I work with are good people. They want to help sick people. They want to make sure that when a patient takes what the company makes, it will work correctly and it will not cause harm. But the vision was showing me something different. The vision was showing me that my company, the good company that I had devoted so much of my life to, was being used for something else. My company was part of a larger system. My company was part of a mass production of something that was not being made to help people in the way that I thought it was being made. What was being mass-produced in these factories were vaccines. Not vaccines like the vaccines that we have in pharmacies right now. Not vaccines that are made in response to a disease that is already spreading. Vaccines that are made because people are getting sick and we need to help them. These were different. These vaccines were being made in advance. They were being made before any disease had started to spread. They were being made in massive quantities. They were being stockpiled. They were being stored. And I did not understand why. Why would anyone make hundreds of millions of doses of vaccine if there was no disease that needed to be treated? Why would anyone spend the money and the time and the resources to manufacture that much vaccine if there was no emergency? In the vision, I could see that this production was happening in secret. The people outside of the companies, the people who did not work in the factories, they did not know about this. The general public did not know. The workers who actually made the vaccines, many of them did not know what they were really making. They had been told that they were making one thing, but they were actually making something else. The equipment was not labeled with the actual purpose. Everything was hidden. Everything was being kept secret. I could see that this mass production was being paid for by 3 different groups. The first group was government, not just the government of America, but governments from different countries. These governments were all working together. They were all involved in this. They were all paying for this mass production of vaccines. The second group was a billionaire, a man who had made his name and built his fortune by saying that he wanted to save humanity. He had become famous because of his claims to want to help people. He wanted people to think that he cared about making the world a better place. And this man was involved in the production of these vaccines. He was helping to fund it. He was making sure that it happened. He was part of the plan. The third group was a man who said he was an activist for human rights. This man had built his reputation by claiming to fight for justice and for the rights of people. This man had also put money into this production. This man had also made sure that this mass production of vaccines was happening. These three groups, the governments, the billionaire, and the human rights activist, they were all working together. They had a plan, and the plan involved producing hundreds of millions of vaccines before any disease had even started to spread. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know who these people were. I wanted to know their names. I wanted to be able to tell people exactly who was doing this and hold them accountable. I wanted to be able to point to them and say, these are the people who are planning to hurt you. But Jesus did not show me their names. He showed me other things. He showed me what they looked like. He showed me what they wanted. He showed me what they were planning. He showed me their intentions and their desires. But he did not give me their names. When I tried to force myself to remember, when I tried to hold on to the knowledge of who they were, I could not do it. It was like he had chosen not to show me that part. It was like he had decided that I would not be allowed to tell you who they were specifically. I was frustrated. I wanted to be able to give you names. I wanted to be able to say, this man did this and this man did that. I wanted you to know exactly who to blame. I wanted you to know exactly who to hold responsible for what was coming. But I could only tell you what I know. And what I know is something different. What I know is this, and I know it in the deepest part of my being. I know it in the way that you know your own name. I know it in the way that you know your mother's face. I know it without being told anything. I just know. And what I know is that these three groups, the governments, the billionaire, and the activist, they were working together. They had a plan. And this plan involved producing hundreds of millions of vaccines before any disease had even started to spread. They knew something was coming. They knew that a virus was going to emerge. They knew that people would be afraid and desperate. And they were preparing. They were getting ready. That is what broke my heart. That is what caused the tears to start flowing. Jesus showed me the reason why these vaccines were being made before the disease even existed. He showed me another vision, a vision that revealed the true purpose of all of this preparation. I saw a virus. This virus was new. It was something that had never existed before in human history. It was something that nobody had ever seen before. It was going to spread across the globe. It was going to move from one country to another. It was going to reach every continent. It was going to touch every people and every nation. But it was going to start in America. It was going to begin here, in the place I was seeing on the map. It was going to start small, in one place. And then it was going to spread. It was going to spread slowly at first, but then more rapidly. And when it spread, when it became clear that there was a serious problem, when people became afraid and desperate, the people who had been preparing, the people who had been mass-producing vaccines, they would be ready. They would have billions of doses of vaccine ready. They would have stockpiles so large that they could vaccinate every person on the planet. They would be able to offer a solution to the crisis. They would be able to say, we have an answer. We have something that will protect you. Just take this vaccine and you will be safe. But here is the thing that made me cry. Here's the thing that broke my heart and caused the tears to pour down my face. The vaccines were not going to stop the virus. They were not going to protect people. They were not going to save lives. The vaccines were going to do something else, something terrible, something that I did not want to believe, but that I knew was true, because I was being shown it by Jesus himself. I saw what happened to the people who took these vaccines. I saw them in the weeks and months after they took them. They began to lose their memories. They could not remember important things. They could not remember what they had learned in school. They could not remember the names of people they loved. They could not remember their own histories. Their minds were being damaged. The vaccines were damaging the ability of people to think and to remember. The vaccines were destroying people's minds, and the government could not help them. The government could not fix this. The government did not know how to reverse what was happening. The government would pretend that the vaccines were working. The government would tell people that the vaccines were safe. The government would insist that everything was fine, but the government would know the truth. Deep down, in the secret places where the truth is kept, the government would know that the vaccines were destroying people's ability to think and remember. The government would know that they had made a mistake. The government would know that they had participated in harming millions of people. I could not control my tears anymore. I was crying, not because I was afraid for myself, not because I was worried about what might happen to me. I was crying because I could see what was going to happen to millions and millions of people. I could see families being destroyed. I could see people losing their minds. I could see children forgetting their parents. I could see parents forgetting their children. I could see a society that would fall apart because the people in it could not remember how to function. I could see civilization itself beginning to crumble because the very thing that makes us human, the ability to think and to remember and to learn, was being taken away. That is when I came back. I do not know how to explain it. I was floating above America, looking at the map in the water, watching the red color spread, feeling the presence of Jesus beside me, and then suddenly I was lying in a hospital bed and I was breathing. So here is what I know. I know that in the coming months, starting very soon, a virus is going to emerge in America. This virus is going to start in California. It is going to spread to other states. By the end of May 2026, every state is going to be affected. The government is going to say that people need to stay in their homes. There is going to be a lockdown. When the lockdown happens, everything is going to change. The price of food is going to go up. The price of medicine is going to go up. The price of everything is going to go up. People who are living paycheck to paycheck are going to suddenly have no way to buy food for their families. People are going to start to starve. People are going to start to get desperate. People are going to commit crimes to try to get food. The hospitals are going to become places of suffering. The doctors are going to be overwhelmed. The machines are going to break down. There are not going to be enough beds for all the sick people. There are not going to be enough doctors to take care of everyone. People are going to die in hospital waiting rooms because there is nobody to help them. The economy is going to collapse. Banks are going to close. Businesses are going to shut down. People are going to lose their jobs. People are going to lose their homes. The wealth that took them decades to build is going to disappear in weeks. And America is going to become a place that other countries are afraid to visit. Tourism is going to stop. Trade is going to stop. America is going to become isolated and alone. Then the government is going to say that they have a solution. They are going to say that vaccines are available. They are going to say that everyone needs to get vaccinated. And people who are desperate, people who are scared, people who have lost everything, they are going to line up to get the vaccines. And the vaccines are going to make it worse. The vaccines are going to destroy people's ability to think and to remember. It is going to be like watching people lose their minds. It is going to be like watching a slow death, not a fast death, but a slow death where people forget who they are and where they are and who the people around them are. The government is not going to be able to help. The government is going to pretend that everything is fine, but secretly the government is going to know what is happening. The government is going to watch as millions of people lose their minds, and the government is not going to do anything to stop it. This is what I saw. This is what is coming. And I am telling you this not to make you afraid, but to make you prepare. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, if you believe that God is real and that He cares about you, then you need to do something right now. You need to go to your kitchen and you need to start storing food. You need to fill your cupboards with canned goods, with dried food, with things that do not need refrigeration. You need to store enough food for your family to last 5 months. This is not a suggestion. This is a warning. If you have the space, if you have the money, if you have any way to do this, you need to start storing food today. And you need to pray. You need to get down on your knees and you need to pray to God. You need to ask Him to stop this. You need to ask Him to prevent this virus from coming. You need to ask him to stop the people who are making these vaccines from finishing what they are making. You need to ask him to open people's eyes so that they can see what is happening, because prayer might work. Prayer might change things. Prayer might prevent what I saw from coming true. If enough believers pray, if enough people cry out to God, if enough people refuse to go along with this, then maybe, what I saw does not have to happen. But if you do not pray, if you ignore this warning, if you just go about your life like nothing is happening, then what I saw is going to happen. The virus is going to come. The vaccines are going to be given. The minds of millions are going to be destroyed. And you are going to wish that you had listened to me when you had the chance. And one more thing. I want to say this clearly and strongly. I want to say this to anyone who has any doubt about what is true and what is false. There are many false prophets right now. There are many people telling you that they have messages from God. There are many people giving you directions about where to go and what to do based on visions they have had. You need to be very careful. You need to pray and ask God to give you wisdom to know the difference between messages that are from God and messages that are from somewhere else. You need to understand that just because someone says they died and came back, just because someone says they saw a vision, just because someone says they talked to Jesus, that does not mean everything they are saying is true. In fact, some of what you are reading and hearing is probably coming from artificial intelligence. There are computers right now that can write things that sound like they came from a real person, but they did not. They came from a machine, and you need to be smart enough to understand that you cannot believe everything you read just because it sounds real. You need to take everything you hear, and you need to compare it to the Bible. You need to ask God to show you the truth. You need to pray and ask the Holy Spirit to give you wisdom and discernment to know what is real and what is not. So, believe some of what you read, but not all of it. Trust God, not people. Pray and ask for wisdom. This is my strongest advice to you. I am sitting here, and I can see the time is coming when I need to be silent again. I can feel the presence of God telling me that I have said what I needed to say. I have warned you. I have told you what is coming. I have told you to store food and to pray. What you do with this information is up to you. What you choose to believe is up to you. What you choose to do is up to you. But I have told you the truth. I have warned you. And you cannot say that you did not know what was coming. You cannot say that nobody told you. The time to prepare is now. The time to pray is now. The time to pray is now. The time to wake up is now. Because we are already in April, and the virus is coming, and there is no more time left. May God help you. May God give you wisdom. May God protect you and your family in the days that are coming. And may you remember this warning, and may you act on it while you still can.